Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, so you heard it there. Matt is stressing diplomacy while visiting the DMZ there. What do you make of all this?
Well, diplomacy is what we want to do. This is ultimately the best way to get this situation done. The problem, and I think where the president's been very smart in this, is for 25 years we've tried diplomacy, but diplomacy's never been backed by a credible military option. So what the North Koreans do is they say, oh, sure, yeah, you know, hey, Bill Clinton, you give us some food and kind of help us with some of our power issues. We won't nuclearize. They nuclearize. That happened under every administration. Now we're at the point where they're firing off intercontinental ballistic missiles. They're close to perfecting reentry technology, which would complete all the pieces. And now the Trump administration comes in, 10 months ago with President Obama saying this is your #1 national security challenge, which I hadn't heard President Obama talk about much up until that point. And now President Trump saying, man, we're 3 steps behind when we took over. We've got to catch up. And the hope here is that diplomacy compels the Chinese, the Russians, the people utilizing North Korean slave labor and also allowing commerce to transition across their borders to actually get on board with stopping this.
Have we seen a change in the rhetoric being used by the Trump administration, president himself, when it comes to North Korea, Congressman?
Well, you haven't heard as much in the last, I guess, month or the last few weeks coming from President Trump, but I think there's some method to that. A lot of people say, well, he's just willy-nilly on Twitter. And I think there's some things I wish he wouldn't put on Twitter. But when it comes to some of these issues, like with North Korea, I think there's benefit in that unpredictability. If you remember the story about Kim Jong-un and his regime reaching out unsuccessfully to Republican strategists because they want to know what President Trump's made of, what it shows is that unpredictability actually kind of makes them nervous and a little on edge. And so I think what you saw is the president with that rhetoric for a purpose, now giving diplomacy a chance to work. He's going to head to Asia and sees what happens there. And it'll be interesting when that trip's over what the tone is again.
And a change in the House. They overwhelmingly approved the bipartisan legislation Thursday, slapping new sanctions on Iran for its pursuit of long-range ballistic missiles. Ed Royce, Elliot Engel sponsored the bill 423 to 2 to pass the measure. Overwhelming support here.
Look, it always blows me away that there's 2 people that vote against it. I'd always encourage people to look at who those 2 people are. But this is a very obvious thing, extremely bipartisan. When I asked Mr. Sullivan, who was part of negotiating under the Obama administration, the JCPOA, the nuclear agreement, I asked him, I said, did you guys include ballistic missiles initially as part of your hope that Iran wouldn't do? And he goes, yeah, we did, but we knew they'd never agree to it, so we pulled it off the table, which means, in my mind, that the Obama administration was determined to get an agreement from the very first place. So what we're doing now is going outside of the JCPOA and sanctioning Iran for doing the kind of missile experiments or technology or development that we're seeing in North Korea right now. Obviously, the 2 go hand in hand. You don't develop ballistic missile capability like Iran is without that being used ultimately for nuclear biological weapons.
Senators yesterday in that Pentagon briefing saying they want more answers on that deadly Niger mission. Senator John McCain has something to say about all this and his concern about ISIS spreading. Listen.
I am concerned about the spread of ISIS throughout Africa, and that's going on, and that's part of it. And unfortunately, the threat is growing.
The threat is growing, says Senator McCain.
Yeah, it is. Look, I've said I think we're in basically World War III here. It's a low-grade version and obviously not as intense as World War II and I, but we're fighting an enemy all over the world right now. And it's going to be in places where we think ISIS is going to go, as well as where they're beginning to take root. In Niger, we're using Green Berets and special operations to build native capability to resist against this, to build indigenous forces. That's exactly what the Green Berets are supposed to do. And so I think had there been a ISIS president in Niger and we had no troops there, you'd have people that are screaming that, how come we didn't see this coming and why aren't we doing anything? We're leveraging the best and brightest of America to use folks in an indigenous region to defend against to defend their own country.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, it has been a busy week, a lot going on. Thanks for covering all that for us. Good to see you.